Hi, welcome. So in this video, we are going to continue looking at Python pandas, and most especially, we are going to be looking at how to connect to your MySQL database. So remember, we have looked at SQL in this series, and you can always go back and take a look. And in this video, we are going to show you how you can connect your Python through pandas to be able to communicate with your MySQL database directly. So let's just go straight and see how to do that. So the first thing is that we remember we had a project when we are doing the MySQL series in this challenge. So you can always go back and take a look. And in that project, if I go in, we had this script which I'll share with you. And if you run this script, it's going to create this database called Company Limited. And this is the database here. And there were many questions that were being asked, like how many staff do we have? How many are younger than this? So these are the different tables, sales table. If you run this, you will get all the sales table data, customer table data, all the customers, and then you have also the staff table data, and then the questions were asked here so that you can use SQL to answer these questions. So you're going to have this script which will create this database for you, and then you're going to have this database Company Limited already created and stored here. Then now we are going to go and see how to connect to this database using Python pandas. So let's go back to that folder, and then we are going to launch your Jupyter Notebook from here using Anaconda prompt. So if I copy this address now and then I type, for example, Anaconda prompt. So when I type this Anaconda prompt, I'm going to go to CD current directory space Control V, and then I press enter. So from here I can run the Jupyter Notebook here, and then I press enter. It's going to open up the Jupyter Notebook from here so that I can be able to access that folder, do everything in this folder. So here, if I create a new Jupyter Notebook here, so if I create this here, I can call this, maybe I just press M for markdown. Remember, you can change it here, and then we can call this maybe MySQL, and then we press enter there. So now I'm going to import pandas. So let me import pandas here, import pandas, and then also I'm going to import SQL Alchemy, and then now when I run this, they are both imported. Now I need to create an engine to connect to from the Python to the MySQL. So I'll go here and search it. So I can say engine for SQL Alchemy. So if I press enter, I have this here. So when I go in here, there are different engines here, but the first line is that I have to run a from SQL Alchemy import create engine. And then if it's a Postgre, this is the line I use, but it's not a Postgre. So I'm going to go back down and be checking here. So if you go down, you will see there's Postgre here. There's MySQL, there's Oracle, there's Microsoft SQL Server, there's SQLite. But what we want is the MySQL, and we want this line here using the MySQL. So if I go here and I copy this, and then I come up here and I paste somewhere here, now I have to first do the from. So if you saw here, if I have to first do this one here. So if I copy this and I paste here, then I have, now I'm saying, okay, let me copy it again, copy this, Control C, Control V here, paste. Okay, so that's fine. So now I have from SQL import create engine, and then this engine now create this engine MySQL plus MySQL. So one of the things you need to do is to install this here. So let me install it. So I'm going to install pip install. So I'm going to pip install now this one here, MySQL here. So pip install that one, and then now I have it here. So now the next thing now is that we need to be able to fill this information. So when you look at it, the first thing here is when we're doing the SQL series here, what we actually had like title here was the root. So if I close this, we actually had this like the root, and that's the name of the user, root, and then your password, and this localhost 3306 is actually how you connect to this server. So it's a local server. So if I go back here, instead of Scott here, I'm going to put root, So that is the name that I am using there. And then this, instead of tiger here, I'm going to share my password with you guys just so that you can be able to connect easily. But normally you should not share your password on the live server. So it's just because this is something we are just learning, and then I'll share it here. So this is where you put your password, and then now you can now have the local host here. And remember this port here, this is how it's written, local host, then the port 3306. So that's the same thing you do here. So local host, and the port is 3306. So these are the things you are changing: the root, your password, you need to change it, and then you add the local, the 3306, column 3306, and the name of the database. So we need to go back. Here's the name of the database, if you remember, company limited. So we use this script to create it, which I'm going to share this script, and you can also be able to use it to do the same, to create first on MySQL, and then you are able to run it here. So if I go back here and I paste it here instead, so if I paste it here, Control V, then I run it. So I've created this engine. So now with this engine, now I can be able to access the staff table. So if I want to access the staff table, for example, staff table, I can say staff table equals to pd.read. So now I'm going to do a pd.read now underscore SQL underscore table. So that is the method. And then I'm going to give it the name of that table, staff table. And then now I'm going to say the connection is the engine. So if I run it now, so let me run this, import pandas as pd. Remember, you need to import your pandas as pd. So if I run that now and I run this one, so let's see the staff table. So here we have it: matricule number, staff name, staff sex, age. So if you go here, look at the staff table again and run this, you'll see that you have everything: matricule number, staff name, staff sex, age. So you're now connected to your MySQL database, which is very, very interesting. And you can be able to read up even the other tables. So if you want, you can read up the customer table, for example, and then we just need to change this to customer table, and we are going to get the same result there. So you see that you can successfully connect to. So we can go to customer table, customer, and all we just need to change here is customer table, and then we can also connect this to change this to customer table, and then we get the customer table. Same as you can do that for your sales table. So sales table, you have them already there, sales table. So if you change this to sales, just from customer to sales, here again you change it to sales here. So here you change it to sales, and then here you change it to sales still, sales. So when you run it now, you get the same tables like wow, you have been getting them. So you might even say you want to answer some of those questions that we had here. So if you see here, we had these queries here. So one of the questions was, how many staff do we have in the company? So if I copy this, you can use pandas to still answer those questions that you were able to use SQL to answer. So I'm going to comment this out, say, how many staff do we have in the company? So if, for example, I get staff table, and then I count the matricule number, for example, this staff table from here. So I want to count this matricule number, this one here. So I want to index that. So we've been seeing this when we did basics of pandas. It's interesting. So you can always go back and take a look, and then we want the unique values. So we want to get the unique. If the matricule numbers are double, we should get the unique, and then we get this, and then we can pass in a len function. So the len will give us the length of this, for example. So it's going to give us that there are 9 staff that we have here. So you can also say, for example, you wanted to get how many staff are younger than 30, for example. So again, this is also an interesting exercise for you, which you can do. So it'll be interesting to see how you can do them. So if I get this, for example, just to make so that I don't type too much. So again, I can say staff table, And then I change this to age because we are now talking about age. And then we now say, I change this to age, and then we now talk about greater and less than 30. So less than 30. Here again, we need to wrap it round. So if I close this, like remember we have to get the database staff table because we saw that in an earlier video when we were doing pandas. So it's interesting to revise this. So we subset this table like this. So this is the subset of it. And then now we can now pass in again a len function to count. So we can have a count len, and then we close this and we run it, we get 4. So you can play with them. You can go back and take a look at these questions and try to answer them with using pandas, same as we did with SQL, so that you can consolidate your knowledge of these two different techniques, or these two different technical skills, so that you can be able to use it to do lots of interesting things in future. So there is also something which you might want to do. You might want to now write to a database. So let me just put a title here so that you have that write to your MySQL. So now I'm going to bring in that database here, that the CSV file we just put here. So read underscore CSV, and then we are going to bring in this CSV file here, this one, auditors. So let's bring it in, and then we call it auditors.csv, and then we can just check the df if it's successfully in. So these are the names that are here now. And then what we want to do is we want to use a method. So we are going to say df.to underscore SQL, and then now we need to pass in the name of the database here, name of the database. So we can say the name of the database is auditors. So we want to brought in some new auditors in the company, and then we want to add them to the database. So auditors, and then there's a connection. What connection are we using? We're using that engine that we created, comma, and then we just want to check if it exists so that it doesn't throw us an error. If it exists, then you append it, you just add it. So you append, you add it, append, and then if we close this, we say index equals to false. So let me just keep that like that, index equals to false. So when you run this now, okay, let's see here. So we have our append, we have our say index positional keyword. So let's just check. There is the SQL, there is the name auditors, there is a connection engine, and then if exists here, so we have to put an equal to here, and then that append. And when we run it now, if we go here to the MySQL, refresh this, watch how it was before. We refresh this, we now see that if we go here in this here, we have now auditors table. So if we click here, we now have this auditors table that has been added to your MySQL database using this method from Python. So using the data frame, this one, .to SQL, and passing in the name of the data, the table here, then passing in the engine that you've created, which establishes that connection between these two. And then you can say if it exists, append it, and then leave out these indices, this 0, 1, 2. You say index equals to false. It's very interesting, and there are so many things that you can do with SQL Alchemy and Pandas. Even writing SQL queries, select star from while you are importing. So this is good to know that you can use this tool and be able to connect directly to your database, get data, and even push back data to your database. So if you have a CSV, couple of CSVs that you wanted to load to your MySQL, you could simply just bring them in Python, for example, Pandas, and then you push them to your MySQL database with this, and then from there you start your database from zero, or after pushing them, you start your database. So I hope you have been able to learn how to connect from Python Pandas to your MySQL database. There are lots of interesting things that this SQL Alchemy can do, but then with this, you should be able to connect and do lots of interesting things. And you can also complete the questions in the assignment or the questions in the project that we did in the SQL project, so that you can be able to flex those skills. See you next video. Wish you good data luck.